All right, so we have got with us two special guests, Jodie and Phil Ounsely. Jodie is a cochlear implant wearer, but most importantly, she's an advocate for inclusion. Her ability to overcome obstacles is just amazing. If you've not seen Gladiators yet, she is the kick-ass Fury gladiator. I mean, come on. This girl's got everything on that. She's gorgeous, which is really annoying. Anyway, so when we were thinking about a special guest for today, because we wanted somebody to come and celebrate World Hearing Day, really mark it. And we found that Jodie said, yep, I've not got anything for World Hearing Day. I'm there. I'll do it. And then we found out that Phil, her dad, was going to drive her up. And I went, let's have him too. So we've not just got one gorgeous person. Got two. So they're going to come to the stage. So who better people to celebrate World Hearing Day, everybody, than Jodie and Phil Ounsely? Massive round of applause. Come on, guys. Please take a seat. You okay? Welcome, welcome.
Hiya, you all right?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. I was talking to Phil earlier, and we got a bit emotional, didn't we?
We did.
We did. We got a bit emotional because it's such a great story, your story. And I've watched literally every video, watched all your social media. I have literally become your stalker, you know. There's nothing I've not watched. But this is what I was saying, Phil. When we found out that you were driving Jodie up, I thought, oh, it starts with you, doesn't it? It starts with you and your wife. Sorry, I've forgotten your wife's name.
Joe.
Joe. So you and your wife. So we've got some questions here which we've put together from members that have actually offered these questions up. So all these questions here are not mine. They're all people that have actually offered them. So, Phil, there's some water here, by the way, at any point. So if you feel like you just want to have a drink or whatever. This is a chat. We're in a pub. If that could, it'd be beer. But it's not. It's water today. Right, so, Phil, could you tell us a little bit about how your story began and when you first found out that Jodie was deaf?
Morning, everybody. Obviously, I'm Jodie's dad, or FOF, as I now appear to be known, father of Fury. I do still answer to Phil, though. So, yeah, Jodie's 23 now. So, 23 years ago, Jodie was born profoundly deaf. She was premature by about 2 months. She was very poorly. She needed lots of medication, lots of antibiotics to save her life. That may have had some impact on her hearing. We don't really know for sure. But fortunately at the time, there was a scheme running at the local hospital screening newborn babies for hearing. And it was a new thing at the time. I think it's fairly common now. And while she was on the neonatal, they established that her hearing wasn't working and that it's probably down to her being premature. Everything should be okay. And they tried again some more screening when she came out of hospital after a couple of months. And it was at that time they established that she was profoundly deaf, both sides. So we're fortunate in some ways. We knew very, very early on, almost from birth, that she was profoundly deaf, both ears. At the time, me and her mum, Jo, we didn't know anybody that was deaf or severe hearing loss. We didn't really know, apart from the obvious things, how that would impact on a baby or a young child. We're new parents at the time. So we arranged a meeting the next day back to hospital, trying to establish what it really means for a baby being profoundly deaf. And I remember that meeting like it was yesterday, a real negative meeting. We took two things from the meeting. We're told, they obviously discussed lots of things, but the two things that we took from the meeting is, one, she probably wouldn't be able to speak, or at least not speak well. And secondly, job prospects would be severely restricted. And we came away from that meeting absolutely gutted as new parents. So from that point, we went to try and find a little bit more about what it actually means to be profoundly deaf as a baby. And from that point onwards, things became a lot more positive. As you will see, Jodie can speak. She can speak very, very well. And because you're trained audiologist, you may have noticed a little hint of a Yorkshire accent in her speech as well. No idea where she gets the Yorkshire accent from. So she speaks well. And she lives a fantastic life. From the age of 18, she's been a professional athlete. She travels the world. She's patron of a couple of charities, the Elizabeth Foundation and UK Deaf Sport, and she has a full and fantastic life. So there is hope out there for young parents who are getting the kids diagnosed as being profoundly deaf.
Oh, that's amazing.
I hope that's the emotional bit out of the way.
Yeah. So yeah, Phil, can you talk us through a little bit about the process for Jodie being referred for a cochlear implant?
So we had to make a decision fairly quickly, really, which route we wanted to go down. So we were learning quickly, speaking to lots of different people. And we did decide fairly early on we wanted to go down the speech and language. And our thought process at the time was, you've got a small window of opportunity to get good speech and language, and the earlier you start getting sound in and developing speech, probably the better. That's what we sort of found out early doors. So we had to make a decision for Jodie, conscious in the fact that she might not want that later in life. She might want to sign, and I know this can be a controversial subject, and there isn't a right or a wrong way for parents to go. You know, there's more than one route. We chose this route, thinking that if Jodie disagreed with us, yeah, she'll have gone down the speech and language, but she could still turn to signing later in life, but she couldn't have done it as easy the other way around, trying to develop speech and language from 16 years of age. So at that time, most kids were about 4 or 5 when they were being implanted. We decided very, very early that we wanted to go down that line, so we pushed to try and get it done as early as possible. And I think Jodie was implanted just after about a year, 14 months, which at the time was very, very young. I think it's the norm now. So that's what we did. The process was fairly quick. I think the process usually took a lot longer, but I think we convinced people that we knew what was needed. It's not a case of an operation and it's a magic cure. We knew that it was years, and in fact a lifetime of input to get good speech and language, and we were sure of that fact, so that we pushed for an early operation.
Brilliant. So, you know, the moment, I've actually watched it, I've had the chance to watch some of the things that have happened, but that moment, obviously you were really young, Jodie, then when your cochlear implant was actually turned on. Can you remember it at all?
No, I was 14 months old, so
yeah.
I don't remember everything. But you and Mum remember it very well, don't you?
Yeah, obviously as a young child, you know the feeling of having a cochlear implant switched on and off, and you did notice the difference. But yeah, that day where they switched on, we didn't know it had been recorded until very recently. Somebody was making a short film about Jodie, and they managed to dig out the original footage from the Yorkshire Cochlear Implant Centre. And there's Jodie sat there at 14 or 15 months old and flicked the switch, and the eyes opened up, and there were life in her ears. Now, we did know beforehand that it wasn't a magic switch. You weren't just going to start talking because they flicked on a cochlear implant, but we knew sound was going in, and we knew how important that was, that sound was going in to start developing speech and mimicking what we're doing. And then from that point onwards, really, it was about us as parents training ourselves to try and bring up a deaf child. We found a fantastic organisation called the Elizabeth Foundation. It's a charity. In fact, Jodie's now the patron for that charity. It's a preschool for deaf children developing speech and language. And went to John Tracy Clinic in LA as well, and they sort of trained us as parents to try and bring on the speech and language in an implanted child. And it was tough, but we saw it as a job for Mum and Dad, and we put a lot of time and effort into trying to develop that speech.
Goodness, how did that work? What did you do?
I think speaking a lot, really, and almost having a running commentary on everything that's happening that day. We were conscious that Jodie needed to be hearing words over and over and over again to try and establish what they meant and mimic them and repeat them. So in our day-to-day lives, we're giving a running commentary, and I still do it to this day. If I'm making a cup of tea, I'm getting the cup out and I'm popping the tea bag in, and lashings of hot water and a sprinkling of sugar. And that were our lives, so we were constantly talking. Obviously, so Jodie could see and hear through her implant. And just over the years, it started sort of sinking in, and she started realising what was happening and copying, and very quickly, really, a speech and language came on. So by the time she got to school starting age, she wasn't quite up to kids of her own age in speech and language, but she was pretty close. But more importantly, because she'd been going to the Elizabeth Foundation, like a little nursery, since she was about literally 3 months old, she was actually further ahead of some of the other kids at school because she'd learnt to sit, to concentrate, to hold eye contact. Literally when she was 3 months old, they'd just sit her on a little vibrating box and play music through and try and keep her attention. So all that training for those 3 years put her in good stead when she started school. She went to mainstream and thrived, did absolutely fantastic. She had a small group of friends who sort of looked after her, really, and that were a big part of her schooling.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. So, Jodie, can you tell us about your cochlear implant? Tell us about it. I'm not going to assume anything at this point.
Yeah, so obviously I've only got one on the right side, and obviously the science behind it absolutely baffles us, doesn't it? Like, just thinking about it, how it all works, but it's just been honestly life-changing for me, and obviously going into professional sport, it's brought me so many opportunities, and obviously, like, why I'm passionate now, obviously trying to get more deaf kids into sport and stuff, but yeah, like, at the same time, I keep it very real as well, you know, it's not like a magic cure or normal hearing. Obviously, I hear sound, but a lot of the time is, lip reading people's body language, facial expressions, it's a whole package. But yeah, in terms of actual implant, just to, experience sounds and being able to speak to people, hearing my parents talk, things like that, it brings so much to the family. And yeah, I just think it blows my mind, honestly,
Yeah.
like people have like invented something like this. So
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've seen you talk about what it feels like when you take it off.
Yeah, so yeah, when I take it off, it's like I say, it's my own little world. So it literally goes like, when you press mute on the TV, that's the only way I can describe it. So literally, as soon as I take it off, it's just complete silence. It's not even silence, it's just empty space. And I love it, to be honest, after a long day. Just take it off, just have a bit of me time. And I did get into trouble when I was younger, though, didn't I? If I were getting told off, I'd just take it off in front of you and be like, I can't hear you, But yeah, it has its sort of pros and cons. So after a long day, take it off, and it's just nice to reset. But yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, that's so funny. You didn't say that on your video. Anyway. So one of our questions, I think, Darren, and I think you asked this, but is your cochlear implant a modified version? Is there something that there's happened to it for it to be worn while you're in a contact sport?
Yeah, so I get asked this a lot, and myself and my family are very open about this. Obviously, it's a normal cochlear implant, it's not modified, and we're very aware that the advice is not to do contact sports. And this was the whole reason why I didn't start rugby until I was, later on in life, because my parents were very like, we don't want you doing contact sports. So it was more my dad. You did a lot of research, didn't you, about the safety measures and what the actual risks are. But we came to a conclusion. I think because I really wanted to do rugby, I was nagging my dad non-stop. My brother started playing.
For years, she would nag him.
For years?
Yeah.
Years.
I think he got sick of it and thought, right, can we try and find a way to adapt so something allow me to play? So we did come across just the typical, like, sort of head guards, like, can we add extra padding into the scrum cap, things like that. But we had got a standard scrum cap, and number one rule was you only wear this, you can only play, like, and train if you wear your scrum cap. I thought, deal. If I look like an egg on the pitch, I'd rather look like an egg and be able to play. So I think you kind of thought, right, I'll let her do a session, get it out of her system, won't like rugby, a bit too rough and ready, just forget about it. But no, it was complete opposite. Went to my first session, first game, absolutely hooked. And yeah, here we are, sort of my professional career, travelled all the world representing England. So yeah, so I wear my scrum cap, and that's been great for me. And I'm very aware I'm not going out there screaming from the rooftop saying, yeah, get into contact sport. I'm very like, it's your own choice, it's your own risk. Always make sure you wear head guards, and just from my personal experience, and I know that's my responsibility and I take that, but I'd rather have some amazing experiences and maybe take a bit of a risk, but I'd rather have the amazing experience. And
of course, yeah.
obviously.
And were you 15, was it, when you had your first match? Was that right? Or first game?
So I started when I was 15, my first match, and then obviously from there, it just took off. It was crazy. So by the time I was 16, I was on a scholarship at Loughborough College as a rugby player, moved away from home, and then just as I was about to start uni, got a phone call from the sort of England sevens team, so to move down to Twickenham and be a full-time rugby player, travel the world, it was absolute wild. It was just so out of the blue. And the funny thing is, because I don't really take phone calls, because, you know, I'm deaf and all that, so my dad actually had the phone call, but I was living in Loughborough at the time, so the coach rang my dad saying, oh, I'm the head coach of the international women's team, we want to offer your daughter a full-time contract. And then I get a random message sort of from my dad saying, oh, we'll come up to Loughborough, do you want to go for a cheeky Nando's? I know a bit like, this were a bit random, why is he sort of wanting to come for a Nando's? And then we went for a Nando's, he handed me a card, and it wasn't my birthday or anything like that. I thought it were a bit, you know, suspicious. And it kind of sort of said, congratulations on your sort of your first job or your first like rugby career, and kind of went from there. So.
Oh gosh, Phil, honestly, this story gets me every time.
That was actually her first job. She always says to me, Dad, I think I should get a real job. She classes she's never had a real job. But I said, if you can get paid for travelling the world, get paid for travelling the world. That's better than a real job.
Yeah. But it's a job. You're getting paid to do something that you're amazing at, right? So that first rugby lesson that you took Jodie to, I mean, I've seen that game, by the way. You got the ball and ran like Forrest Gump, and nobody was touching you.
I was running for my life, I tell you. And the thing was, I tripped over my shoelaces just before that, so I was so embarrassed. I thought, right, I just need to do something here.
That first session nearly never happened. What Jodie hasn't said is, but prior to rugby, she didn't have the confidence to speak to anybody. And she sat in the car. She'd nagged me for years to go, and she sat in the car park and refused to get out, absolutely terrified to speak to strangers. So the impact that rugby has had on Jodie, it's forced her to speak to people. And I could tell within weeks and months you're changing as a person. Up to that age, sort of 16, although she could speak, she would never go into a shop and say, can I have a bottle of milk or whatever. She just didn't have the confidence to do it. So not necessarily rugby, but sport in general, I think, is so important for deaf kids and hearing kids to get involved, just to bring them on, learn to sort of communicate with people. So it was life-changing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even just if I didn't have rugby or didn't have sport, I wouldn't be sat here. I wouldn't be sort of the person I am now. And it's still a work in progress. I'm not 100% there with my confidence, but I mean, even in terms of from last year, I would be terrified doing something like this. But that's just from forcing myself to speak to people and being in team sports where, and the fear of sort of not hearing people or feeling a little bit embarrassed. It's like when I was actually just honest with my teammates, they were just so understanding, and I think sort of more people need to sort of realise that, like, it's actually all right if you just sort of speak up, and people just usually don't really have sort of the awareness, or they're just a bit oblivious, and then if you actually sort of say it, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise. So yeah, that's been a big thing for me.
Yeah, you're right, Phil.
Yeah, I think what we've found over the years when she's gone to different sports or clubs and teams is that people think it's a little bit of a taboo subject to speak about being deaf, that they don't want to say the wrong thing and upset somebody. But I think we've found just talking about it and getting people to talk about it is always the best thing. And then everybody's needs as a deaf person is different. So you can say to the club or the coach or your teammates, this is what I need to be able to communicate with you. And it's always worked better when we've done that, just spoke up. Just retreating into your shell is the worst possible thing. So speak up and agree with coaches how things are going to proceed.
Brilliant, thank you. So, are there any advantages to having no hearing? Does that work to your favour?
Yeah, in rugby it's great because it's it's a team sport and you need to be visual. So I'm very visual, and in a game of rugby you need to know your surroundings. You need to read where the space is. You need to, like just even little things of reading body language and stuff. Just because I'm so used to that. Like, even the way you can predict how people are going to move, which way they're going to step and things like that. So I really do try and use it to my advantage. But obviously, on the other hand, it's also the most impossible thing as well, being on the rugby pitch whilst, being deaf. Obviously, because communication is vital in rugby. It's a team sport. You've got to communicate with each other. But you just got to find ways to adapt. So my teammates, again, have been brilliant. I've been very honest with them, very open, and they've just been great with me. So we do like little hand signals on the pitch, and just obviously I've been having to be very just the analysis type side of things, just being very on top of that. But yeah, sometimes we do little hand signals on the pitch and people are a bit like, what are they planning? But yeah, it's good. You just got to find ways to adapt and sort of use it to your advantage.
Yeah, and that's it, adapting, and that will be different for everyone. But one of the things we found with coaches, if they're teaching a new move or a new concept, is to do that off the field, face-to-face. This is what we're going to be doing over the next 30 minutes and talk it through, rather than try and do that shouting across a windy, rainy rugby field. So they're only small things, and coaches are quite happy to adapt. But it makes a massive difference to somebody with hearing loss just to have a little bit of forethought and explain things beforehand.
Yeah. Do you want to say something? No.
Go
okay.
ahead, yeah.
So one of the things what obviously we're interested in, what you touched then about how people accommodate for you while you're playing rugby. Can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so obviously in the rugby world, that's just come from me being very open. If I wasn't honest with my teammates or my coaching staff, I would struggle a lot more. And people just generally forget in my situation. I think just because I tend to crack on and I've always managed, I lip read, I'm just so used to that. Sometimes they just generally forget. And now I'm very open and I just remind them, and it's and they support me. But in terms of people adapting, especially in Gladiators, the filming and stuff, it completely shocked me actually, because you just don't know what you're sort of going into, the production side of things, and TV. It's very different to what I've done. I'm used to being on the rugby field. So even before we got into filming, the whole crew, producers, Gladiators, all had sort of deaf awareness courses. And then even just the lighting systems in the studios, when you see all the numbers on the screen for the stop, go, all those sort of things. Referees put the arms down, hand signals so I know to go if I for some reason didn't hear the whistle or something like that. And even when obviously you don't see it in the show because it don't all get edited in, but just constantly letting me know what's going on, asking if I've heard everything. Always just making sure they're facing it. Just little cues that seemed so little just made a huge difference. And they were just so supportive and just always checking in with me, and I really appreciated that, and made my experience so much more, positive. So
yeah. Do you go?
Yeah. I went to every day of filming in Sheffield. Yeah, I were reading the same jokes 12 days in a row. But yeah, an arena environment with loud music and lights going down and people cheering is probably the worst possible environment you could put together for somebody with hearing loss. So it was fantastic what they did to make life a little bit easier for Fury.
Yeah, Fury, FOF, that's you, Phil. Right, have you got any funny or embarrassing stories to share? Now, if you...
Are you thinking
I think Phil has.
Well, I don't know which one's worse. Well,
Let's have them both. Let's have them both.
I think the most common one, I've done it a few times, to be honest, but one that stood out was obviously on rugby field. I ran the length of the pitch thinking I scored this like belter of a try, to find out they actually blew the whistle like halfway up the pitch. So I was sprinting thinking I scored the try, and everyone was stopped like thinking, Jodie, you haven't scored it.
That's a lot of effort. A lot of effort went into that, bless you.
I know. And then I were knackered, and then I had to just walk back and carry on. Another time, well, we laugh about it now, but we had a game at Twickenham, and obviously this was the first game where they'd had sort of a crowd, so I was quite young at the time, and it was the first experience of experiencing so much background noise and not, being able to hear sort of my teammates around me. And in this one situation, I just didn't hear the whistle. I generally didn't hear the whistle. So obviously he blew the whistle and everyone stops, but I just carried on. So he straight away got his yellow card out, sent me off.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, I don't know why I've been sent off. What have I done here? And then afterwards I explained, and he was a bit mortified, wasn't he? But we joke about it now, like it was just one of them things. But
I think he gave Jodie 3 warnings to get back outside, and she ignored him 3 times. So I think that got his back up. Obviously didn't know she couldn't hear. All he thought, well, we've got an ignorant player here not listening to me, and sent her off.
Brilliant. Okay, so what have been the most challenging situations for you both, during this?
Do you want to go first? Oh, challenging. Well, it's got to be just actually playing rugby on the pitch. Like, as much as the experiences and it's my career, it's absolutely amazing. At the same time, it's an everyday struggle of just constantly my brain's just always on, 100 miles per hour, always just checking people around me, always just, even in meetings, analysis meetings, lip reading, it's just, obviously, being deaf is draining as it is, but, intense training, also being a rugby player, it's just a whole mixture. But at the same time, obviously, I'm not complaining, it's my dream job, but it does come with its daily struggles. You just got to find ways to adapt and sort of make it work, and that's what I'm always going to do.
Brilliant. Well done, you.
I think as a parent, hearing fatigue is a real and serious issue for deaf children growing up. Coming home from school absolutely shattered. Being in an environment talking with lots of people has a big draining effect on Jodie, because she's trying to look for other cues over her hearing, so lip reading, body language, trying to pick up signals, the embarrassment of maybe missing something that's happened, and you don't know what's going on. So hearing fatigue was a big issue growing up and going through school, and still is. She's a busy person, and she does get drained quite easily.
I get that, yeah. So, well, this is a question again from the membership. Often as audiologists, we find that support is a big factor and in the success of hearing devices. How key has that support been for yourselves?
Well, barring the first meeting, which I mentioned, it's been absolutely fantastic. The Yorkshire Cochlear Implant Centre and Medel have both worked together with Jodie, and she obviously has a little bit of an alternative lifestyle, travelling the world. And it's not that easy to get appointments to go for your checkups. She's out of the country for long periods of time, so they've really looked after her in terms of having spare processors and been flexible with going in with breakages or checkups. So yeah, they've been really fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we are going to open questions up to the room in a minute, so if you want to be thinking about anything that you want to ask Jodie and Phil, please do. But one of the stories that, watching and reading about you, I'm going to have to just look at this. The coal carrying champions. All right, does anybody ever heard of the coal carrying champions? These guys are coal carrying champions, and you are presenting the medals on the 1st of April, am I right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about it.
Yeah, it's a typical Yorkshire event, and it's a massive thing in our family. And this is actually the event that started my sporting career, as you say, because I did my first race when I was 4 years old. And basically, long story short, you get a sack of coal, put it on your shoulders, you start at pub, you run is it like a mile?
Three quarters.
3/4 of a mile uphill, and it's first one to Maypole. And yeah, it's simple as that, but it's massive, innit? And you know, there's trophies, you get prize money, you get, like, in the streets, it's absolute chocker. Like, everyone comes and watches every Easter Monday. So yeah, you started it, didn't you? And obviously I watched you train. I didn't really understand what you were doing at the time, being young, just running around with a sack on your shoulders. But yeah, so I entered my first race, and then from there did it every year, and sort of won it 5 times. You've won it once, haven't you? But now being obviously a professional.
Sorry, 5 once. Just saying.
Just saying. Yeah, but obviously now being a professional rugby player, there's no chance I'll be able to do that. You know, I had to get a big telling off from physios and coaches, but we still go every year to support. And then this year I've sort of been asked to present all the medals for, like, the kids races, the adult races. So it's like a sort of full circle moment, isn't it? So yeah.
So there was a defining moment in Jodie's life that I knew she was going to be a sporting star. And she was about 3 or 4 years old. I'd been training for the coal race. She'd seen me with a sack of coal on my shoulder. And we're in the kitchen, and Jodie came downstairs in this little lycra swimsuit. And she'd found a big bag of carrots somewhere. I had a little pony at the time. She'd got a bag of carrots. She got a little woolly hat on. She put these carrots on her shoulder, and she ran round the dining room table. And she ran round, and she got faster and faster, and she kept going and going and going. And me and my wife looked at each other, and we thought, she's going to be an athlete. She was running full speed and just never, ever stopped, just kept going round and round in circles. And it was true. She became an athlete.
Yeah, but well done, you know, as a parent, for spotting that and seeing it and cherishing it and bringing it through, because I think you've been a massive inspiration. But I can't talk about that without crying, Phil, to be honest.
Yeah, I think parents can definitely encourage the kids and put them on a good path. But Jodie didn't need any encouragement. She's always been the most determined person you could ever meet. Whatever she's doing, she'll give it 110%. So it didn't need any encouragement from me, all down to Jodie.
And obviously, your mum is a huge inspiration for you as well, isn't she?
Yeah, my mum's a wild one, isn't she? She, without being biased, she's the most, like, selfless, caring, hard-working person you can ever come across. And she's just constantly pushed me and just, she makes me want to be a good person. Like, when I look at my mum, I always think, if I'm half of the person as you are, I'd be chuffed when I grow up. So, yeah, like, both my mum and dad have been absolute rocks to me, like, just done nothing but support me in everything I do, sporting-wise, gladiator-wise, everything I've done. And if anything, I've really struggled with confidence growing up. Obviously, I'm very shy. Confidence has been massive, so there was always the people to pick me up and just keep encouraging me and saying, you know, pushing me to get out my comfort zone when I absolutely did not want to do it. And obviously a bit of Yorkshire grit, just saying, get it done, you know. So yeah, they've been amazing.
Yeah, so the photo that's on the screen at the moment is a photo of you and your auntie. And that is just, can you just talk everybody in the room through what that photo means to you?
Yeah, so this is my Anna Jane, as I called her. So the story behind this is my Anna Jane, she lost her eyesight when she was a teenager. I think she was around 16 or something like that. So she was completely blind, and obviously me being profoundly deaf, she was very, you know, very stubborn, very, like, refused to use a cane. She was like, just get it done, like, make it work. And yeah, she was honestly a huge impact in my life. Just constantly sort of showed me as a young little girl that, you know, you can make things work and adapt things. And the one thing I always remember when I was younger, I don't know why it sticks in my mind, but we used to always walk to the corner shop to get our little wine gums and little sweets and that. And obviously she's blind, and obviously I'm deaf, so we get to the sort of road to cross the road, and I sort of turned to her and said, well, how are we going to cross the road here? Because, you know, we're in a bit of a disadvantaged position here. And I remember she literally turned and like snapped straight away. She was like, Jodie, we're going to make it work. We're going to get across road and we're going to get to the shop to get the sweets. And we did. And it was just like, we made it work. And she always sort of had this little saying that I'd be her eyes and she'd be my ears. And we just made things work. And like, yeah, she sadly, she's not with us anymore. But she was just such a character. And like, again, similar to my mum, very strong-willed, very wise, get the job done, and yeah. So I've had such positive people in my life, and sort of pushed me to where I am. So I'm going to end up getting a bit emotional here.
I know. I'm sorry, but if I am, you are. And this is the thing. What really becomes apparent, I feel, is that you have the recipe to create you. They say it takes a town to bring up a child. You've had that village around you to support you, and look at the result, you know, and with the professional support that you've had as well, it's just phenomenal. And one of the decisions that you've made to do is to be an advocate for inclusion and all of those things. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Jodie?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a full-time rugby player, but when I'm not on the pitch, I'm so passionate. I just wanting to be a good person, wanting to be a good role model, and sort of raising deaf awareness. So I'm the honorary president of UK Deaf Sport, obviously patron for the Elizabeth Foundation, so which is so lovely to have that now. Obviously they've helped me growing up, all these different things, and I just really want to sort of, you know, support deaf people and obviously show the younger generation, even gladiators, you know, just showing young little deaf kids like watching TV, like you got to see it to be it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I'm so like passionate about that, and do everything I can to, you know, support people and help people. So I think I'm always going to be like that. I've just got such a drive in me. I've got a bit of fire in me, and I don't know where it's come from.
Really, you can't see it.
I don't know where it's come from, but I think it'll always be with me. And so
it's wonderful. I think it's just great work. And Phil, you were saying earlier about what the messages that Jodie's getting.
Yeah, I think Gladiators has been such a positive platform for Jodie to put deaf awareness out there, and the number of messages that Jodie gets every single day from parents of deaf children, with pictures of deaf children with hearing aids, cochlear implants, kids that refuse to wear the cochlear implants, but now they see Fiore on telly wearing one, they now want to wear it. They're trying to hide their hearing aids previously, now they want to show them and get stickers on because of Fiore. And the pictures that you get every day, they're absolutely amazing, heartwarming, and it's not an exaggeration to say life-changing for some children seeing Fiore with a cochlear implant. It's that big for some kids. Just change the way they act. They now want to go to school. They're not ashamed of being deaf. It's been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's completely blown me away. Like, I was just shocked to see such heartwarming messages. Like, it baffles me seeing messages like that. But yeah, and again, just not even sort of like the deaf awareness, like little girls getting into rugby now. It's like going to rugby sessions with blue braids and like sending videos of the little biceps, and it's amazing. And like just to get that like positive reaction, it just melts my heart.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. Right, so we're going to open up to the room now. Does anybody have a question? Tasso? So can you tell us more about why you're just wearing one cochlear implant?
Well, I think at the time when I had my implant, it wasn't really common to have two at the time, was it? So I just naturally had the one implant. But then over the recent years, I've been offered a second implant. But I've turned them down just purely because of my rugby career. I just think it's a bit more of a risk. You know, obviously, as you know, a lot goes into it. It's another operation. It's not just, you know, overnight situation. You know, you need time to heal, you know, the rehab, the switch on. So, and obviously, my life is crazy being an athlete anyway, and anything that's going to, you know, maybe delay that. I've always said if I got offered an implant when I've retired, then I'd do that. But I've always managed, and I've sort of got to where I am now. So I think it's done all right.
Yeah, we had that decision to make when Jodie were probably about 8 or 9. We're offered the second one, so she was a bit young to make that decision herself. The way we saw it at the time is going from profoundly deaf to 1 implant is a massive jump. No hearing to whatever the percentage is, 70-80% hearing. But then that risk then for the second one, we're weighing up the risk of another operation against what she would gain. And yes, she would gain something with the second one, but it'd be more of a top-up. It won't be like as big a jump from 0 hearing to some hearing. So things are going really well, and we thought we just didn't want to jeopardise it. Had she been offered both at the same time, we'd have obviously done it, but we decided against the second one.
Anybody else got any questions? Yes. Do you want to go in? You are thinking about doing it yourself? It's all right, Steph. So Steph and her daughter, is it just your daughter? Massive fans. And when Steph's daughter found out that she was coming here today, well, put it this way, if you don't have a selfie before the end of the day, you're going to be in trouble. All right, Steph? Right.
Oh, I love that. I'll send her a video after.
So how did you get into gladiators?
So I got invited to this trial, and I actually didn't think it were real at the time because, you know, like it was unknown that Gladiator was coming back, and, you know, scams these days and stuff like that. So, I got invited to this trial, and I'm talking this physical, grueling trial that was, you know, I'm a rugby player, so I thought, it'll be all right, you know, it's just a bit of a fitness test and all that. But yeah, it was just a whole bunch of us, all different athletes, all different backgrounds, and we had like 10 different stations, and then you were just going against each other. It were like how many pull-ups in a minute, like shuttle sprints, rowers, jumping over boxes, like, and then tackling and pads and stuff, which for me, I thought, this is a bit of me, you know. So, yeah, just went through the trials and then sort of had interviews just like about your personalities, your background, like your relationship to gladiators. Just sort of went from there, really. And at the time, I was in season with rugby, so I never expected anything to come from it, to be honest. So when I sort of got the call and said, do you want to be Fury? I was like, what? So kind of went from there. And then obviously I had to go to my sort of my coaches and rugby team and just explain. They were very supportive. And here we are.
So you were given the name Fury.
Yeah, so they kind of sort of came with and I said, where did you get that from? Like, where have you got Fury from? And there was like, well, obviously my background with rugby and sort of my split personality, because when I'm in, basically I am Fury when I'm playing rugby. Like, when I'm on the rugby pitch, something just, I switch like that, and I'm mean business, I'm in the zone. And then as soon as the whistle goes, I'm just like, oh, that was a nice game, wasn't it? You know, it's just like, and I have a lot of love and I have a lot of respect for people. So I think people are a bit like, how can you just switch up like that? And it's just my competitive nature, really. But yeah.
Brilliant.
Do you want to mention your background in gladiators? What part of the family?
Well, I was coming to it, Phil. I wouldn't have missed you out, but go on then, Jodie.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention.
Yes. No,
Yes.
I meant the events that were set up at home.
Oh, no, we were going to talk about you, Phil.
I thought you wanted a shout out or something.
Yeah. Well, let's give him a shout out first,
so
Jodie.
my dad was actually a contender on the previous series. So I obviously went to the live shows and like watched him. And I remember like it was yesterday. So Gladiators has been a massive thing in our family. But yeah, with training and stuff, when I was a little kid, so I was like 7. Again, this is just my parents all over. My dad set up like the rings in our garage, so we're just doing like a little hand tough. And then he built a climbing wall, so we obviously had like a wall in the garage and stuff. So he made it in to put sand on the floor, got the sort of climbing holds and stuff like that. Hung a ladder up on the ceiling so you could swing off it and stuff. And then obviously training for this Gladiators, you know, a lot of training goes into it. And obviously I'm a rugby player, but there's all different events and stuff. So again, if you have been watching Gladiators, the edge, do you know, the one that's like 30 foot up in the air, we put like skirting
Scaffolding planks.
yeah, on the floor outside in the grass just to get the movements and that, and I went against you, and then got the rings set up again, and you were practicing on you one, trying to get you off the rings and that, so, and then with tackling and wrestling and stuff again, practicing with you, so basically it's been my training buddy my whole life, really.
Yeah, you can see that, it's just brilliant. By the way, did anybody else watch Gladiators back in the day? Yeah, see, you've got fans here. I was obsessed. How well did you get on as a contender?
Not very well.
Oh.
It's a sore subject.
It was a long story. The short version is we did the first filming day, and in the eliminator on the Sky version, you had to go into water. And nobody had tested what the eliminator would be like with wet feet.
Oh, no.
We were the guinea pigs on the first one, and everybody just fell flat on the face. Even when they stopped the eliminator, we still couldn't get up. It like crawling up a sheet of ice. So not very well.
That's not very fair.
But when they aired it, they aired us week 6. So it showed 5 weeks of, because they changed it so you had dry feet. 5 weeks of everybody running up the eliminator, no problem. Then it was Idiots Week on week 6, when everybody were falling flat on the face and literally had to crawl up barefoot. We took our shoes off, crawled up on our hands and knees. So, great experience, but it didn't go too well.
You did smash it as well, especially on hand tough, although everyone were getting on your back, weren't they? Because obviously the gladiator is supposed to go for the contender, wrap your legs around and get them off. But you just thought, actually, I'm going to go for gladiator. So he starts sort of trying to get gladiator off, and then didn't he fall off?
It wasn't in the rules to say I couldn't do that, but they changed the rules after and did a retake for the film.
Yeah. Can we see that online? Is that online? I've not seen that.
No, they did a retake. But when you watch the retake, we've fallen into water. I'm already dripping wet through. I'm surprised nobody's picked up on that, because the original take, I got the gladiator off, and they retook.
Which one was it?
The angry one with all the tattoos, the ex-marine.
Wolfman. No.
No, this is the Sky version in 2008.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
right.
I forget his name.
Yeah. But it's funny now, because it's all on YouTube and that, so we watched it all back, didn't we, before I started filming, and it was just a full circle, in it, like family and that. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Any more questions? We've got time for one more, I think. Yes, Patrina.
Yeah, I've obviously I get a lot of really lovely messages, but a lot of them is from parents, innit? Like, sort of just saying, they're kind of going in that transition. They're about to have the implant, and they're feeling very like anxious, very nervous. Obviously, they don't know what to expect, or as parents, they haven't had that support, so just all these emotions flying around, and they've sort of just said, even just seeing me on Gladiators, just saying, oh, well, obviously you've done all right, so you've given me that confidence and hope now that it's my daughter or son's going to have the same experience. So, and a lot of questions as well, just in terms of.
Lots and lots of messages. I remember when Jodie was about 4 or 5, I was a member in an audience of a similar sort of setup to this, and they brought some kids on stage who were about 10 with cochlear implants. And it was so amazing for us to see kids, 10-year-old, being able to speak. Bear in mind, we've been told she may not be able to speak. So I think being able to see, years down the line where your child might be is so rewarding. It was for us. Literally just some kids sat here just having a chat. And I remember that to the day, that it was such a big thing for a parent to see. So we do get lots and lots of messages. And I think the fact that she's on Gladiators just speaks for itself, really. Parents in my position years ago will be saying, well, that could be our Jimmy. You can have a good life if you profoundly deaf. So I think it's important that you see people like Jodie in the public eye, and that it can be successful and positive, and not sort of the negative message we got as young parents.
And it's becoming much more common now, like Rose on Strictly, Tasha on Love Island. You know, it's becoming more visual in the sort of the media and stuff, and sometimes that's all it needs.
That's what we need.
For kids to see it. And because I know if I were younger, like when I was younger, I didn't really know anyone who was deaf. It was more like sports people who I really looked up to, like Usain Bolt. I was absolutely obsessed with him, you know, just like positive. I had the T-shirts and everything. But yeah, like for a young generation now to just see it on TV, I just think that's massive. And I think, again, that's why I'm so like, I take so much pride in having this opportunity to do that, and just want to do good, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, I think that is the perfect note to finish on. You have been the most amazing guest, so easy to chat with, and just offering of your story. And we can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, can we give them a massive round of applause? Jodie and Phil Ounsley.
Thank you very much.